The wheels of the private charter plane screeched against the tarmac, sending a shudder through Amanda Thornton's body as she stared out of the window. The golden horizon stretched endlessly, the sun hanging low, casting an ethereal glow over the African plains. A different world. A world untouched by the chaos of Manhattan, by the lifeless boardrooms, and by the cold, hollow walls of her penthouse. This was why she had come to escape. To breathe. Amanda had spent years feeling trapped in a life many would envy. At 45, she had everything: a successful husband, 2 grown children in prestigious universities, and a bank account that could buy her almost anything. And yet, despite all this, she felt invisible. Her husband barely looked at her anymore. Her children only called when they needed money. She had become nothing more than a shadow of the woman she once was. So, when the opportunity arose to travel alone, to indulge in the raw beauty of Africa, she seized it without hesitation. A safari, they called it. A luxury escape. But for Amanda, this was more than just a trip. It was a chance to lose herself in something wild, something real. She stepped out onto the sun-baked ground, adjusting her designer sunglasses as the dry, warm air wrapped around her like a lover's embrace. The sky was vast, endless, a deep shade of blue that made the glass and steel skyline of New York seem suffocating in comparison. In the distance, the rustling of acacia trees swayed gently against the whispering wind, and beyond that, the promise of adventure loomed like a dream waiting to unfold. A black Range Rover, polished to perfection, was waiting for her. A man in a crisp beige uniform and a welcoming smile opened the door for her. "Welcome to Africa, madam," he said in a rich, accented voice. "You are in for an unforgettable experience." Amanda smiled, sliding into the cool interior of the car. "I certainly hope so." The vehicle sped down the dusty road, taking her deeper into the heart of the wilderness. Tall grass stretched on either side, golden and swaying, hiding secrets within its depths. Every now and then, a herd of zebras would appear, their black and white coats almost surreal against the endless plains. Amanda watched in fascination as a family of elephants crossed the road ahead, their majestic forms moving with an ancient grace. There was something untamed about this place, something that made her feel both insignificant and alive at the same time. "This is your first time in Africa?" the driver asked, glancing at her through the rearview mirror. "Yes," she said, still mesmerized by the landscape. "I've traveled all over the world, but never here. I needed something different." The driver chuckled knowingly. "Africa changes people, madam. You may not leave the same way you came." Amanda smirked, dismissing his words as poetic nonsense. But deep inside, she felt something stir, a whisper, a warning, or perhaps a promise. After hours of driving, they arrived at the luxury safari lodge. It was breathtaking, a collection of thatched-roof villas built into the hillside, overlooking a vast watering hole where animals gathered to drink. The staff greeted her warmly, offering her a cold drink as they guided her to her private suite. The room was exquisite, decorated in rich earth tones, with floor-to-ceiling windows that opened to a wooden deck. A sheer canopy draped over the king-sized bed, and in the distance, she could see a lion resting under a tree, its golden mane shimmering under the setting sun. For the first time in years, Amanda felt something she couldn't quite name. Freedom? Desire? The thrill of the unknown? Whatever it was, she welcomed it. That evening, as she sipped on a glass of fine wine by the bonfire, she noticed him. He was standing near the edge of the camp, half hidden in the shadows. A young man. Lean, strong, his skin the color of midnight, his eyes burning with something she couldn't place. He wasn't like the other staff members, who walked with polite submission. No, there was a quiet defiance in him, a silent strength that both intrigued and unsettled her. He caught her staring. For a moment, time seemed to stretch between them, thick and heavy, charged with something unspoken. He didn't look away, nor did he smile. He simply held her gaze, unflinching, as if he could see right through her. Then, just as suddenly, he turned and disappeared into the darkness. Amanda exhaled, realizing she had been holding her breath. Who was he? She had come to Africa looking for an escape. But something told her she had just stumbled upon something far more dangerous. Something that would change everything. The day stretched on in golden hues of sunrises and the echoing roars of distant lions. Amanda Thornton found herself seduced by the rhythm of Africa, the slow, deliberate passing of time, the way the wind whispered through the acacia trees, the wild unpredictability of it all. She had never felt so untethered, so free. The luxury lodge, as exquisite as it was, became too curated for her restless soul. She wanted more. Something raw. Something real. So, when the opportunity arose to visit a nearby village, a place untouched by luxury, where life pulsed with the heartbeat of the land, she didn't hesitate. The moment she stepped into the village, a sense of otherworldliness washed over her. The air smelled of burning wood and fresh earth. Children ran barefoot through the dusty pathways, their laughter carrying through the air like the song of birds. Women balanced baskets of fruit on their heads, their vibrant fabrics dancing in the wind. And then she saw him. Kofi. He was standing near the edge of the marketplace, arranging handcrafted jewelry on a wooden table. 17, though there was something in his eyes that made him seem older. Something sharp, something knowing. He moved with the confidence of a man, his body lean and strong from years of labor under the unforgiving African sun. Amanda's gaze lingered longer than it should have. He must have felt it, because he looked up, locking eyes with her. A slow, deliberate smile tugged at the corners of his lips, not one of submission, but of curiosity. Unlike the others who greeted her with either polite indifference or eager hospitality, Kofi seemed unaffected by her presence. He didn't treat her like a wealthy foreigner to be impressed. He simply watched her, as if he saw something beneath the layers of silk and gold she wore. And Amanda felt something she hadn't in years. Heat. Desire. A dangerous, reckless thrill curling in her stomach. Would you like to see something special? Kofi's voice was smooth, laced with an accent that only made it more intoxicating. Amanda tilted her head. Something special? He gestured toward the horizon, where the setting sun was painting the sky in hues of crimson and violet. There's a place, just outside the village. A hidden spot where the earth kisses the sky. Only a few know of it. There it was. The invitation. The chance to step further into something forbidden. Amanda hesitated, but not for long. Show me, she whispered. The journey was short, but with every step, she felt the pulse of anticipation building. They walked through narrow pathways, past thick brush and tall grass, until they reached an open plateau. And it was breathtaking. The land stretched infinitely before her, meeting the sky in an embrace of endless color. Below, a river carved its way through the valley, its surface glowing under the dying light. For a moment, Amanda forgot everything. Her life in Manhattan, her husband, her children, the weight of responsibility. She turned to Kofi, who was watching her, his expression unreadable. You like it? He asked. She nodded. It's beautiful. He smiled, and for the first time, she noticed how his lips curled, the way his dimples formed like shadows against his dark skin. Something inside her shifted. It wasn't just the view. It was him. One evening turned into 2, then 3, then a week. Amanda found excuses to visit the village more often. She lingered in the marketplace, watching Kofi as he worked. She requested him specifically as her guide whenever she ventured out to explore the land. At first, it was innocent, a fascination, a harmless indulgence in the thrill of the unknown. But then, something changed. It was the way Kofi looked at her, not like a woman past her prime, not like an untouchable foreigner, but like something he could devour. And Amanda, for the first time in years, wanted to be devoured. The first touch was accidental. A brush of fingers as he handed her a carved wooden pendant. But the electricity in that moment was undeniable. The second touch was deliberate. A hand on her lower back as he led her through the winding paths of the village. The way his fingers lingered, the way she let them. By the time she invited him to her lodge, the lines between right and wrong had blurred into nothingness. It was reckless. It was forbidden. But Amanda had spent too many years being good, being proper, being caged in a life that suffocated her. So, when Kofi pressed his body against hers in the flickering candlelight of her private suite, when his lips brushed against her skin, she didn't resist. She surrendered. The affair should have been fleeting. A stolen moment. A secret buried beneath the African sun. But Amanda knew that secrets had a way of growing roots. After their first night together, she saw something change in Kofi. The hunger remained, but so did something else. Uncertainty. He was young, too young to understand the weight of what they had done. And she? She was old enough to know better. She knew she had to keep him close. So she gave him gifts. Gold chains. Expensive sneakers. Wads of crisp American dollars slipped into his hands under the cover of night. At first, he refused. "I don't want this," he said, his voice firm. But Amanda smiled, running her fingers down his chest. "It's just a token, my darling." And eventually, he took them. The gifts became their silent pact, their unspoken agreement that what happened between them would never be known. Or so she thought. Because in the depths of the village, behind the knowing eyes of the elders and the whispers of the wind, there was one who saw everything. One who would not let such a betrayal go unpunished. Obo, the native doctor. Kofi's father. The man who had sworn long ago that if anyone ever harmed his son, the land itself would rise against them. Amanda Thornton had walked into Africa believing she could own whatever she desired. What she didn't know was that she had just sealed her fate. And the price of her sins was about to be collected. The nights in the savannah had once been Amanda Thornton's solace, wrapped in the warm embrace of distant drumbeats and the whispers of wind through the acacia trees. But now, those very nights turned against her. The sickness began subtly, just a mild fatigue, an ache in her limbs that she dismissed as exhaustion from her adventures. She attributed it to the relentless African sun, the rich, unfamiliar spices of the local cuisine, perhaps even the emotional high of her reckless indulgence with Kofi. But as the days stretched on, the symptoms worsened. Her skin, once flawless and pampered by the finest creams Manhattan could offer, began to dry and crack as if the very moisture was being pulled from her flesh. Deep fissures formed along her arms, her legs, jagged, unnatural. No matter how much lotion she applied, her skin remained parched, flaking like ancient parchment. And then there were the dreams. At first, they were mere fragments. Flashes of Kofi's face, the weight of his hands on her, the sharp glint of something hidden behind his eyes. But soon, the dreams morphed into something darker. She would wake gasping, drenched in sweat, the scent of burning herbs thick in her nose. A shadow lurked in the corners of her mind, whispering in a language she could not understand. And always, there was the sensation of unseen eyes watching her. By the fifth night, Amanda could no longer deny that something was terribly wrong. Her luxurious suite, once a haven, became a prison. The wide windows that overlooked the vast golden plains now felt like gaping mouths ready to consume her. The voices of the lodge staff, once friendly and warm, now felt hushed, conspiratorial. She stopped eating. Every bite tasted of ash. Even the fresh fruits, pineapple, mango, guava, became bitter on her tongue. Her body rejected everything she consumed, and her once curvaceous figure grew frail, her cheekbones jutting out like sharp edges against her deteriorating skin. Then came the whispers. At first, she thought they were just the echoes of staff murmuring in the halls. But they followed her. Soft, sibilant voices slithered through the air, curling around her ears like smoke. "He knows. He sees. You cannot hide." Amanda pressed her hands to her temples, trying to drown them out. "Leave me alone," she screamed into the empty room. The moment the words left her lips, the bedside lamp flickered violently before shattering into 1,000 jagged pieces. Amanda scrambled backward, her breath ragged, her heart a thunderous drum in her chest. Something was inside the room with her. Something unseen. Watching. Waiting. And then, just for a split second, she swore she saw him. Standing at the foot of her bed. Kofi. But his eyes weren't the warm, mischievous orb she had once been drawn to. They were black. Hollow. Amanda blinked, and he was gone. A hallucination. Or was it? The next morning, Amanda fled. Dressed in a long-sleeved tunic and oversized sunglasses to hide her deteriorating appearance, she boarded a private car to the nearest city, desperate to find a doctor who could explain what was happening to her body. The clinic was small but clean, and the doctor, a man in his 50s with kind, intelligent eyes, examined her with quiet concentration. "You say this started when?" he asked, tracing a finger over the deep cracks forming on her forearm. "About a week ago," she croaked, her voice hoarse from sleepless nights. "It's getting worse." The doctor frowned, glancing at her with something that looked eerily like recognition. "This is not a medical condition," he said finally. Amanda's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" she demanded. The doctor hesitated before lowering his voice. "Have you angered someone?" Amanda swallowed. "What? A healer? A native doctor," he clarified. "These markings," he pointed to the deep fissures spreading across her skin, "are not natural. You are cursed, madam." The room tilted. Amanda shook her head violently. That's ridiculous. I don't believe in superstitions. The doctor sighed, leaning forward. Belief is irrelevant. Whatever you have done, you must fix it. Immediately. Before it is too late. Amanda shot up from the chair, her hands trembling. I'm leaving. But before she could storm out, the doctor called after her. Seek the one you have wronged. Only he, or his blood, can lift the curse. Amanda didn't remember much of the drive back. Her mind was a whirlwind of denial and terror. A curse? Impossible. But the proof was in her rotting flesh, the whispers that haunted her every step, the weight of an invisible force pressing down on her like a hand around her throat. By the time she reached the village, night had fallen. The shadows felt thicker, denser, as if the land itself was breathing in anticipation. She staggered through the narrow paths, desperate, her once polished appearance reduced to that of a madwoman. She knew where she had to go, to the small hut at the edge of the village, where the scent of burning herbs and ancient magic lingered in the air. Obio's home, the feared native doctor, Kofi's father. Her legs barely carried her as she collapsed at the entrance, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The beaded curtain rustled, and then he stepped out. Obio. His presence was overwhelming, tall, draped in dark robes, eyes that seemed to pierce through the very fabric of her soul. He looked down at her, his expression unreadable. You are here, he said. Not a question. A statement. Amanda clutched at his feet, her voice breaking. Please help me. Obio tilted his head, considering her. Then, after a long, agonizing pause, he spoke the words that sealed her fate. You have defiled my blood. Amanda's heart stopped. You have taken what was not yours, he continued, his voice as cold as the grave. And now, the spirits demand their price. Tears streamed down Amanda's sunken face. I'll do anything, she whispered. Anything. A slow, knowing smile crept across Obio's lips. Then you will stay. Amanda blinked. What? You belong to my son now, he said simply. To my family. To this land. Her breath hitched. You will be his wife. That is the only way to stop the curse. Amanda's scream echoed into the night. But the land did not care. It had already claimed her. The clinic's fluorescent lights hummed softly, casting a sterile glow over Amanda's deteriorating body. She sat hunched in a worn-out chair, her once golden skin now a sickly shade of gray, covered in deep, jagged cracks that oozed a strange, dark liquid. The local doctors, one after another, examined her with furrowed brows, whispering among themselves, avoiding her eyes as they offered the same hopeless conclusion. There is nothing we can do. Amanda gritted her teeth, her breath shallow. What do you mean nothing? She hissed, slamming her fist onto the examination table. I'm rich. I can fly in the best specialists. There has to be a treatment. The doctor in front of her, a wiry man with sharp features, sighed heavily. He looked exhausted, as if burdened by the weight of something beyond his control. This is not a sickness, he said, his voice laced with quiet finality. You are cursed, madam. The word struck Amanda like a physical blow. She wanted to laugh or curse. Curses weren't real. This was the 21st century, and she was a woman of reason, of power. But the pain in her body, the whispers in the shadows, the unrelenting decay of her flesh, none of it followed the rules of medicine or science. Panic clawed at her chest. There has to be a way. Someone must know how to. The doctor's gaze darkened. Only one man can undo what has been done to you. Amanda already knew the answer before he spoke the name. Obio. The fear in her gut coiled tighter. The villagers feared Obio. He was no mere healer. He was a force beyond human understanding, a man whose power stemmed from something ancient, something primal. And he was the father of the boy she had used and discarded like a passing thrill. By the time she reached the village, the whispers had already spread. The people did not look at her with curiosity anymore. They looked at her with knowing eyes, with judgment, with something far worse, pity. Her once pristine silk blouse clung to her damp skin, her designer sandals sinking into the dusty ground as she staggered through the narrow paths. She was no longer the powerful Manhattan woman who had arrived with wealth and arrogance. She was something pitiful now, a ghost of herself. Two village men, their expressions unreadable, escorted her toward the darkened hut at the edge of the village, the one shrouded in the scent of burning herbs and ancient magic. Obio was waiting. He sat on a carved wooden throne, his frame imposing, his face shadowed by the flickering flames of a nearby fire. He did not move as Amanda was forced to her knees before him. Silence. Then, finally, he spoke. "Do you know why you're here?" Amanda's throat was dry, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please. I need your help." Obio's sharp eyes flickered with something unreadable. "Help?" He leaned forward slightly. "When you came here, you saw this land as a playground. You took what was not yours. And now, you beg for mercy." Amanda's breath hitched. "You defiled my son," Obio continued, his voice as heavy as the night itself. "And now, the spirits demand justice." A single tear slipped down Amanda's cheek. I didn't mean." Silence. Obio's voice was like a clap of thunder, and the wind outside howled in response. "The spirits have already spoken. The sickness that rots your flesh is their judgment." Amanda trembled, her body racked with pain. "Please. I'll do anything." Obio's gaze darkened. "Anything?" The fire between them crackled violently, as if the very air had shifted. "Then hear me, foreigner," Obio said. "There is only one way to break the curse." Amanda clutched at her chest, nodding desperately. "Tell me. I'll pay. You will surrender your old life," Obio interrupted. "Your wealth. Your past. Your family." Amanda's blood ran cold. "You will stay in this land," Obio continued. "You will marry my son. You will bear him children. You will become one with the village you once saw as nothing more than an amusement." Amanda's vision blurred. The words sounded distant, unreal. Marriage? To Kofi? He was a child. She had used him, bribed him, silenced him with gifts. She had never considered him anything more than a fleeting indulgence, a thrill. And now, she was being given to him. Her stomach twisted violently. "No, I can't. I have a husband. I have children. You had them," Obio corrected coldly. "That life is no longer yours. The spirits have already taken their claim." Tears streaked Amanda's face, her body trembling like a leaf in a storm. "Please, there has to be another way." "I can't. I won't." Obio tilted his head, considering her. Then he slowly lifted a small wooden bowl filled with a dark, viscous liquid. "The choice is simple," he said. "Drink and accept your fate. Or refuse, and let the curse consume you entirely." The room felt like it was closing in. She thought of her husband back in Manhattan, the man she had grown distant from. She thought of her children, who barely spoke to her, wrapped up in their own lives. Would they even care that she was gone? Would they even search for her? Amanda looked down at her ruined hands, the cracks spreading further with each passing moment. She had already lost herself. What was left to fight for? Her breath was shallow as she reached for the bowl with trembling fingers. She lifted it to her lips. The liquid was thick, bitter, like swallowing the very essence of night. As the last drop slid down her throat, a deep, burning heat spread through her body. She gasped, clutching her chest as the fire within her veins consumed what little remained of her past self. Obio watched in silence, his face unreadable. "The spirits have accepted your offering," he said finally. Amanda slumped forward, her vision darkening. And as she collapsed into the dirt, the last thing she heard was the sound of distant drums, signaling the beginning of her new life. The morning sun rose over the village, casting golden light over the earth, but for Amanda, the warmth felt cold, distant, mocking. She sat motionless in the dimly lit hut, her breath shallow, her body trembling in disbelief. She was no longer Amanda Thornton, the wealthy Manhattan socialite. She was now Amanda, the wife of Kofi. The reality pressed down on her like an unbearable weight. Just days ago, she had roamed the village with the arrogance of an outsider, tossing money at problems, expecting the world to bend to her will. Now, she was a woman without a past, without a name, without control. The ceremony had been swift but haunting. Dressed in borrowed traditional garments, Amanda had been led through a ritual older than any law she had ever known. The village women had bathed her in sacred herbs, rubbing thick paste into her skin, their hands both rough and unyielding. She had been paraded through the village, her hair braided with beads that clinked softly as she walked, her wrists bound with red cloth as a symbol of her submission. She had stood before Kofi, the boy she had once taken for her own pleasure, the boy she had underestimated, the boy she was now bound to. And he had looked at her, not with anger nor pity, but with something far worse: satisfaction. Amanda awoke to the sound of voices outside the hut, the rhythmic pounding of maize against stone, the crackling of fires, the laughter of children. For a brief moment, she imagined she was back home in New York, waking up to the hum of the city, the distant sirens, the scent of freshly brewed coffee. But then she moved, and the rough-woven mat beneath her reminded her of where she was. Not in her high-rise apartment, not in the safety of her old life. Here. She turned her head slightly. Kofi sat near the entrance of the hut, his back against the wooden frame, sharpening a blade with slow, deliberate strokes. He didn't look at her, but he knew she was awake. "Your new life begins today," he said simply. Amanda swallowed hard. Kofi rose to his feet, stretching his lean frame. His youthful body was strong, unburdened, while hers felt like it was withering under the weight of this nightmare. "You will work," he continued, finally turning to face her. "You will cook, you will clean, you will serve the village. You will learn the ways of my people." Amanda clenched her jaw. "You can't expect me to." Kofi stepped closer, his expression calm but firm. "You have no choice." She wanted to protest, to scream, to fight. But deep down, she knew he was right. She was nothing here. No more credit cards. No more private jets. No more power. Only the life that had been chosen for her. The village women did not welcome Amanda with kindness. To them, she was not a wife. She was not even an outsider. She was a lesson of arrogance, a lesson of consequence. They handed her baskets heavier than she could carry, sent her to fetch water from the distant river under the relentless sun, made her pound maize until her hands blistered. The first time she collapsed, breathless and shaking, the women merely watched. "Get up," one of them said coldly. Tears burned Amanda's eyes. I can't." The woman clicked her tongue in disappointment. "A wife must work. A woman must endure. Or perhaps you are too delicate, too weak for this life." Laughter rippled through the group, mocking. Amanda bit her lip, tasting the salt of her own sweat and tears. She had never felt humiliation like this before. She had commanded rooms filled with powerful men. She had signed contracts worth millions. She had been a woman of status, of wealth, of dominance. And now she was nothing more than a servant to these people she had once looked down upon. The village elder, an elderly woman with sharp eyes and a face carved by time, stepped forward and leaned in close. "You are here because of your own doing," she murmured, her voice like rustling leaves. "No one will save you. You will not wake up from this nightmare. You will either learn to survive or you will perish." Amanda's breath hitched. She wanted to argue. She wanted to tell them that this was insane, that she didn't belong here. But then she caught Kofi's gaze from across the fire, watching her. And she realized something chilling. He wasn't going to save her. Because he didn't have to. Days bled into weeks. Amanda lost track of time, her body growing lean, her once soft hands now rough from labor. Her dresses, once luxurious, had been replaced with plain, earth-colored garments. Her hair, once perfectly styled, was now braided with the same beads as the other women. She was changing, not by choice, but by necessity. She watched Kofi from a distance, the way he moved with ease among his people, his laughter rich, his presence strong. She had taken him as a boy. Now, he was a man who owned her. Late at night, she lay on the cold mat, staring at the thatched roof above her, the scent of burning wood filling her nostrils. She thought of her husband. Would he even look for her? Would her children care? A bitter laugh escaped her lips. No, she had lost them long before she had ever stepped foot in this village. And now, she belonged to a world that would never let her go. Her stomach twisted at the truth. There was no escape. There was only obedience. Kofi did not mistreat Amanda. He did not beat her. He did not starve her. But he did not love her. He did not need to. He watched her struggle, watched her bend under the weight of her new reality, and he reveled in it. She had once wielded power over him. Now, she kneeled before him. She had silenced him with gifts. Now, she had nothing to give. And yet, a part of Amanda knew Kofi was waiting for her to break completely. And when that day came, when her spirit was shattered beyond repair, That would be the moment he truly won. The moment she would no longer be Amanda Thornton. The moment she would be his. The night was heavy with the scent of damp earth and burning wood. The village fires flickered in the distance, their glow casting eerie shadows against the trees. Amanda sat in the darkness of her hut, her breath shallow, her heart pounding like a war drum against her ribs. She could no longer live like this. The endless labor, the humiliation, the way the villagers looked at her, like she was nothing, like she had never been anything. She had thought she could endure it. She had thought, perhaps, in time, she could regain some control, some dignity. But every day, she was reminded this was not her world. And it never would be. She had to escape. She would escape. Amanda had spent weeks watching, listening. She had learned the village's routines, the times the guards at the edge of the settlement changed shifts, the quietest hours of the night when even the dogs slept. She had memorized the paths leading into the dense jungle, had spoken in whispers with traders who passed through, searching for anyone who might help her. But no one dared. No one wanted to anger him. Obio's curse was not something to be tested. Still, Amanda refused to believe she was trapped. There had to be a way out. She just had to act fast before her body betrayed her again. Because the curse, it was still inside her. Though she had learned to endure the pain, the sickness still lingered. Her skin still cracked, her muscles still seized, her mind still slipped into madness when she resisted too much. But she could feel the curse watching her, waiting like a venomous snake curled in the depths of her soul, ready to strike if she dared defy it. Tonight, she would risk everything, because there was nothing left to lose. The village was silent. Even the wind had gone still. Amanda crept through the shadows, barefoot, her hands trembling as she clutched the small bundle of food she had stolen earlier that day. It wasn't much, but it would have to be enough. The jungle loomed ahead, dark, endless, unforgiving. One step, another. She kept her breath steady, her movements light. She had to reach the river. From there, she could follow its current until she found another village, another chance, someone who could help her return to the life she had lost. Her foot pressed into the damp soil, her heart hammering. Then a sound. A whisper. No, not a whisper. A voice. Low. Ancient. Crawling beneath her skin. You dare to run? The curse had awakened. Amanda staggered forward, pushing through the thick vines, her breath ragged. No, please. But the pain came fast. Her legs crumbled beneath her, her body convulsing as fire licked through her veins. Her skin cracked open like dry earth, deep fissures forming along her arms, her face. She screamed, but no one would come. No one would dare. The jungle pulsed around her, the trees seeming to twist and move, watching as the curse took its final hold. You took what was not yours. The voice filled the night, ancient and merciless. You will never leave. Amanda clawed at the dirt, dragging herself forward, her vision blurring. She could see the river. Just a little more, but the moment she reached out, the final blow struck. Her lungs ceased. Her body locked in place. She fell, her face pressing into the damp earth, unable to move. The river, so close, yet impossibly far. And then, she felt it. The curse was not just punishing her. It was consuming her. Her breath slowed. Her heartbeat faded. The jungle grew silent once more. By morning, the village knew. Kofi stood at the edge of the jungle, staring at Amanda's lifeless form. The villagers gathered behind him, whispering. She had tried to run, and the curse had done what it always promised it would. Obio stepped forward, his weathered face unreadable. He looked down at Amanda, then turned to Kofi. She is no longer yours to burden. Kofi gave no response. There was nothing left to say. The jungle had claimed her. And the land did not mourn. Years passed. Amanda Thornton's name faded from memory. The village continued as it always had, untouched by time. And in the quietest moments of the night, when the wind rustled through the trees, some claimed they could still hear a whisper, soft, broken, lost. A warning. A reminder that some debts could never be repaid, and that the land never forgets. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thrilling tales. What would you have done in Amanda's place? Let us know in the comments. Stay tuned for more gripping stories. Until next time, stay curious and keep listening. See you soon.